each of the panelists here, we featured in the book, and we asked questions in our research. And so I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourself quickly and how you use mobile tagging, and then we'll just talk about what it is and how people are going to create experiences. We just saw John give a great presentation about his uses, and it'd be interesting to see how you use mobile tagging in your work. So first, Patrick, just a quick intro.
Hi, my name is Patrick Donling. I am the creative producer for 2Ergo. We use Microsoft tags and QR codes to create mobile engagement strategies across mobile web, mobile apps, and other mobile solutions.
I'm Roger Marquis. I'm a founder of a marketing consultancy called 2D Barcode Strategy, and I'm helping companies and agencies make use of the technology as best they can. I'm agnostic whether it's tag or QR codes, and I also blog about the space.
And I'm Robin Lanahan. I'm from Microsoft Tag, and I actually run the Tag Creative Lab, which we're working on getting better experiences created in the mobile world. And I'm going to change the name of Roger's blog to Tag from 2D Barcode.
I'm Carlos Lamadrid, Chief Brand Officer at the Women's Day Brand Group. For those of you who are not women, we're the 4th largest magazine in America. We also have a website, books, TV shows. You'll see us on Hot in Cleveland coming up, where Valerie Bertinelli is going to be an employee of ours. We have incorporated Microsoft Tag into the magazine, both on the editorial side and as well as for advertisers. And we work with our advertisers to create specific offers for our different advertisers and for our consumers.
Okay, so let's just quickly start by defining, or just talking about these different types of tags. We have the QR codes, mobile, we have barcodes, Microsoft Tag, recognition and everything else. I mean, can we just talk about the space and what the confines are?
Okay. Who do you want to go first? Well, I'll start, I guess, a little bit, just because my whole goal when I look at any kind of technology is how does it enhance the consumer experience for my ultimate product, which is my magazine. Yes, we have a big website, but the magazine is really how do we extend that experience. And I was an early adapter to all sorts of Snap Now technology. I looked at SnapTel, which is sort of the early precursors of some of these technologies, and we got great feedback. And by the way, just as a little bit of education, our reader is 35 to 50 years old, a mom of a couple kids, middle America, middle income. So they're basically the Walmart shopper, and there's always a misperception that it's some young techie person oftentimes doing this, but they're super savvy because they have kids. They're on the go, they're moms, they work, they're around, their kids are texting them. A woman with a child, middle school to high school years, is as tech savvy oftentimes as those kids are, because they have to be. And so we looked at all of them, and specifically we ended up going in the last, I guess this is our second year, right, with Microsoft, and because not that the consumer really cares other than the ease of use. They only care about the ease of use, but Microsoft had a certain brand name recognition with credibility in the when it came to technology. Then we would go to an advertiser and say, hey, Procter & Gamble, we want to do this for you, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to, for Aussie hair products, we're going to show different hairstyles with our editor doing some video on it or whatever. The fact that it was Microsoft gave them some instant credibility, and it has worked very, very well overall.
Sure. You write about mobile tags. What's the difference in your eyes between a QR code and other
I'm not a technologist, but there's obviously technology differences between the two.
I can speak to that.
But what I think is really important, I think John from Nellie Moser pointed out in his presentation, that it's really not a matter of what technology you're using, what code symbol you're using. It's really making sure that the experience itself is relevant, meaningful, useful, value to the end consumer. And making sure that the whole strategy is thought out from start to finish, from the creative on through the mobile experience itself. And I think that's really what's most important, not necessarily the code itself.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the differences between QR codes have been around forever. I mean, not 10, 15 years in Japan they started. And I think that it's an industrial code and everything's hard-coded in it, whereas the Microsoft tag is a pointer, and there's only one scanner, one reader for the Microsoft tag, and there's hundreds for QR. So it's very confusing because QR code readers are, because they're open source, there are so many different ones, and there are many that are not very accurate. And Microsoft tag is accurate. It's also just a pointer, so there is nothing hard-coded, meaning you can create a tag and you can change what's behind that anytime you want. You can run a contest, you can change the message daily, you can have people receive different information the first time they scan and the second time they scan because it knows your user ID on your phone. So there's a lot of flexibility that kind of speaks to the differences between how the two systems work.
We've actually just incorporated that because of its simplicity. We have something called the Golden Ticket. If you guys are familiar with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and the Golden Ticket, where to encourage, we're getting about 1 million women using Microsoft Tag in about 4 issues a year. And so but oftentimes they're very specific. For example, we run an ad, basically, I call it, snapping for dummies, which is, this is how you do Microsoft Tag. You take your phone, and step 1, 2, 3, we had a YouTube video educating them on how to do it, all that kind of stuff. But oftentimes they would really pick and choose because it's very clear what the consumer has to, you have to give them a reason to do it. So, I'm looking at this ad, why should I, snap it? And a lot of times it's sweepstakes. They love a sweepstakes. But also it can be a life insurance calculator like we did for New York Life. But the thing is, sometimes they will actually literally pick and choose because, gee, what am I going to get when I do this? And sort of to incentivize them, sort of stretching themselves a little bit, we have this thing called the Golden Ticket, where random prizes pop up. Sure. So the more you do it, obviously the better the chances. Because it is so easy and simple for them to use, it's just literally taking the phone and pushing the button.
I think it's a really interesting point. When we last did a talk like this, we were in South by Southwest, and every flyer and every street sign had a mobile tag. And what was disappointing was the experience of clicking through. John just spoke about, don't just send somebody through to a website.
Right.
And you started to talk about the different experiences. Patrick, can you talk about, how do we improve the user experience around?
I think that's the way I think of it, tags are really just a way of getting someone from A to B. And right now, I think we're very much still in the curiosity phase of marketing, and we're going to move more into infotainment. And then in the larger picture, I think when you're thinking about mobile engagement, how can you start really forming better relationships between brands and users? And I think one of the great things I love about mobile tagging is it's pretty instant. If any of you haven't scanned a code before, it usually just takes 2 seconds. And then you could either have a video, some more information, or a coupon. But it's a really great way to add to your opt-in database if you're doing email marketing, and combine it with your other marketing toolkits. But what I've heard from the rest of the panel is really think about this as a tool. It's still going to be about the communication behind your advertising message and how you can get that to connect with the rest of your brand.
If I could say, Piers, it's not a matter of marketers and advertisers who think that they have to use a technology and just put it on at the end of the thought process of building out a campaign. It's really part of the campaign from the onset and should be looked upon that way because that's what's really going to make it a good experience all the way through. As Patrick is saying, it's a tool. So it's just like anything else in the marketer's handbook or marketer's arsenal. You're going to use this and apply it because it makes sense in this application versus that application. It's not going to be across the board working for everybody necessarily.
Yeah, and I think the key too is that, it's funny, we were one of the first magazines to do it. We did it, Men's Health did it, I think Rolling Stone did it, and a good friend of mine was running Rolling Stone at the time. I actually called him up and kind of razzed them for it. But they did, a book like Rolling Stone put it on because it was cool. It was like this new technology. But that's all good and fine. That's your only agenda. But if nobody uses it, who cares? And I think that regardless of whatever the technology is, it's got to be super easy to use, has to be very reliable, and you have to tell them why they need it. So it's a tool, but a tool for what? What am I actually getting? If I'm going to bother doing it, what happens? And I think that part of the problem with this technology is that the people who actually use it, okay, whether it's the flyers at South by Southwest or whatever, it's like, why am I doing that? I think I've always thought a great thing would be for, buildings in New York, for example, where it's an architectural historical tour, and you go through and get information, for example. There's actually a dial-in one in Philadelphia, if you've ever done it for some historical buildings, which frankly doesn't work that well, unfortunately. And you can hear a recording of what is this building, what's the history of it. So I think there's lots of applications. The trick is always to figure out, A, it has to be easy, but also the trick is to figure out is if you implement this technology, what is the consumer getting for it? I always go back to the consumer and say, look at it through the eye of the user. They're not techies. People don't, in general, do not use technology because they're interested in it. They use it because it gives them something.
Sure. Okay. I mean, Robin, your job is to talk to agencies and creative companies about the use of it to create more engaging experiences.
And I think that it's, mobile experiences right now are sort of where the internet was 10 years ago, where people have not been paying close enough attention to what the art direction looks like, and how do you optimize a mobile experience rather than just taking it straight off the web and making it small. That doesn't necessarily work. I mean, it needs to be thought of conceptually, and then you need really strong art directors to think through the concept from beginning to end, rather than, to your point, slapping it on at the end and then giving it to some junior person in the studio to figure out what to attach it to. It really can work hard if it's thought through from beginning to end conceptually. And we've seen great cases in Korea. One of our best cases is Lotte, which is a drink. It's kind of like an Izzy soda there. And they did a 45-second commercial that was a love story, and it ended abruptly. And the only way you could see the ending was to go with your phone to the store and scan one of the flavors, and each flavor had a different ending. And then you could go in and you could vote on which ending you thought was most important and more interesting, and they could crowdsource the next endings for the commercials, and it's really been successful. They've been running it for 9 months now, and we see huge amounts of scans on that campaign alone.
It's a very innovative use of using video, but of the campaigns that I review, probably 9 out of 10 will resolve to a YouTube video, leaving the consumer with absolutely nothing to go to and to read about. And it needs to be thought of more than just saying, let's take some pre-existing content and just put it in, on the scan resolve and leave it at that. It can be a lot more than that. It's a great avenue for customer reviews to be highlighted and featured. If it's a product, so find a local store that's offering the product. On and on and on. I mean, it doesn't need to just be a video, just because it's on the phone.
Right. Well, really, what we're ultimately talking about is just the basics of branding, which is, first you've got your awareness, then you've got a product preference, and ultimately that emotional connection. If you work backwards and say, I'm trying to get somebody to emotionally connect with my product, ultimately so they buy it, right? Then you've got to say, how do I do that? Then you build in the technology. The reason that worked with, what was the soda company? Lotte is because you've got somebody involved. You not only have them involved with, gee, what could happen, you have them emotionally involved with how it's going to happen, and you're making them do something, so you've got kinetic learning going on with visual learning going on. You're going to have much longer awareness and brand identity, and they've sort of worked for it. It goes back into what Aaron was talking about with playing. It becomes a sort of a game, and now they're engaged, and isn't it fun? And I'm getting some information, and I get to give my my feedbacks, and I'm part of the ending.
And it can all be shared from there.
Right, of course.
Yeah, and I think connecting your experiences, your mobile experiences, also into the social experiences, and making sure there is a link, to Facebook and Twitter, and to be able to share that content is great. And most of the services now allow you to do that.
I think on that note, most advertising in the print media is usually viewed as passive, and this is a really great way to make it interactive. So not only you can track the impressions you're getting, but as you brought up social networks, if you give someone the ability to share your product and your brand with 300 of their closest friends, I think it's a really powerful way to get your impressions up. And the other part, I think, when we're talking about user experience, my personal goal when I approach mobile engagement experience is how to get people from just being a fan to being your brand ambassador. So when they go home, they're telling people about your brand and they're endorsing it. And I think that's a good way to spread word of mouth.
Okay. You were touching upon, I like the phrase snapping or something. That's the language that you're using for your audience.
I think it's a simple concept. It's like we've been, cameras have been around for a long time. So this idea of just, snapping it, Microsoft Tag is great, but the consumer doesn't care about Microsoft Tag. They care about when I take my phone and I push that button and it snaps because it makes a snapping noise, that it works, and what do I do with that? And I think that's ultimately keeping it really simple.
Yeah.
and easy to use, which is why we use Microsoft Tag, frankly,
Sure.
because it's very, I mean, our women are very, very vocal. We have one of the biggest Facebook fan pages. One little thing, we had actually a typo in a recipe that we printed. Let me tell you, that was hell to pay. I mean, we had like 1,300 women within a few hours when the magazine hit going, "What's a third ingredient? It says 2 cups, and it's impossible." And we're like, "Oh," you know, like.
Let's talk about that more. No, let's talk about smartphone penetration. You touched upon the fact that
That's a little personal, don't you think?
yeah. But it had to be you. But let's talk about it. I mean, you know, there's the whole argument against it is, you know, you can hit each side of the coast, but you can't hit the middle. You know, feature phones rather than smartphones don't have this technology. You obviously feel that's been overcome. Have you guys ever seen? I mean, what do you think in terms of the adoption of mobile tags?
It's just going to keep increasing as smartphone usage and purchases keeps happening. It's just going to be perpetual that way.
Yeah, I mean,
one will keep feeding on the other.
There's obviously an education curve, but from the people that I know that know what these scans are, the reason why they interact or not interact is based on, do they care about the product? Do they want to know more about the brands? I think a huge challenge for mobile in general is, trying to get my phone out, is to stop thinking about this as a phone. I think it's a computer now, and if I lose my keys, I'm okay, but if I lose my phone, my whole life is out of order. And I think if you have the ability to have this intimate connection with a brand, and QR and Microsoft Tag is a really great way to get there very fast. You can have these really great experiences.
What I would add to that too is that I think advertisers/marketers have to be more strategic ultimately about what they're doing. You know, why can't you take a product and every product has a different, you know, Microsoft tag on it, and the consumer goes through and collects these, creates a short film, posts it on YouTube, through Facebook or Twitter, when everyone votes on it, and that wins a special contest, and that's going to be shown at a film festival somewhere. I mean, there's all sorts of fun things that to get people engaged using Microsoft Tag that's not about the phone or selling them the product, but getting them emotionally engaged.
Sure.
And I see a real lack that we actually don't let everybody, all of our advertisers, use the Microsoft Tag. They have to go through my marketing department and discuss it with them what they're going to do.
Wow.
So
what's the criteria for
it's what is the ultimate user experience. I'll give you a classic example. I probably shouldn't be, you know, Libby's pumpkin pie is a Nestle, you know, it's a Nestle product that was around, and they wanted that you snap and you get a pumpkin pie recipe. I was like, well, with all due respect to Libby's, I hope nobody's here from Nestle. You know, these women everyone comes to our house for Thanksgiving. They know how to make a pumpkin pie. It's just a same old recipe, right? Like, you either got to spice it up, and even then, it's just a recipe. It's still not enough. So, and we ended up not putting it on. I'm like, either come up with something more interesting, or we're not putting it on, and we didn't. So, again, because we want our people to come back to it, and on that, the problem is they hold us accountable. They said, oh, I put that pumpkin pie recipe, and like nobody actually, you know, snapped on it. I'm like, well, you know, it's sort of like telling somebody, well, your baby was ugly. No one took a picture because the kid was ugly. No,
Okay. We have to be careful of our time today. Honestly. Maybe we talk about some best-in-class practices. We have a lot of marketers in the audience, agencies, creative agencies, and so forth. Do you have some advice from your experience or from what you've watched? You know, 3 key things.
I would think more than anything else, you're done with the whole creative process. You want to just make sure you're testing that the code actually resolves to what you want it to resolve to. Make sure it's sized correctly, or you'll learn that by testing. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that aspect of it.
And my suggestion would be don't use Yankee Stadium. There's no service inside. Watch out on the subways. I mean, there's the technical side of it. And then there's the creative part, which is really give them something that's meaningful, and you'll see the results. And the cool thing about Microsoft Tag is you get automatic results you can read right on your screen. So real-time feedback. You get a heat map of everywhere in the United States or in the world somebody is scanning, as well as which tags they're scanning. So you can put multiple different tags, like test them in different magazines, see how the different magazines do, test them in different places. And so it's really fun to be able to have that information and share it between client and agency and watch the campaign work.
Sure.
One thing I want to share, if anyone's coming from a print background, a lot of people Microsoft tags specifically, you can customize them. You could add your logo, you could add graphics. And for a lot of people that are coming from the design side, one reason they don't want to use a lot of codes is because they're viewed as ugly. And if you can infuse your logo, it actually adds a lot more brand credibility to something that you scan. So in addition to adding instructions, like you said, I expect the content on the other side of that is going to be of value to me. The other thing that I think Microsoft just released, which is awesome, is their real-time location feature. So I think it's cool that if you scan a code in a magazine, you could have one experience, but if you scan it in the store, you could have a completely different experience. And it could be more of a targeted call to action, and you can increase your ARPU, ROI, and all that other stuff.
Any recommendation that you give to clients?
Yes, I always say, forget about what your agenda is, forget about the technology, work backwards, look and say, if I was a consumer, whoever, and by the way, it changes from magazine to magazine, so you have to understand the DNA of who that reader is. I always say a magazine is like a magnet. It attracts people of like interests together, but more importantly, like values together, how they live their lives, how they make their decisions. So you have to look at it from that perspective and say, why would this consumer, what is it that they want, why would they interface with this, what's the end game, and then work backwards using the technology. We know the technology works. I mean, I have to say Microsoft Tag, not one complaint ever, which is pretty amazing, considering we don't have a lot of readers on the subway. But I think that as long as you start there and go backwards, you usually have a success story with it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today and sharing those points. And I'm sure you'll be around at coffee break if anybody wants to ask you some questions about this technology. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.